celebrate National Wine Day on Tuesday, May 25th. So we're going to dive in. I obviously am going to get to why the two of you are so passionate about wine and what you're doing in the wine industry. But before we get to that, I want to give a little context and background on each of you. Phyllis, I'm going to start with you. I'm looking at your background as we set up to do this interview. I mean, JP Morgan, Citicorp, Bank of America, you are an investor, you are on many, many boards. You are an amazing woman in finance. So tell us a little bit about your career path, and then how did you get into wine?
Well, thanks, Felena. And first, just so excited to celebrate National Wine Day as a very new winemaker. But as you note, I've spent 30 years in the financial services industry, in the private sector with large banks, in the government at the US Treasury, and then on my own in both in volunteer nonprofit and in financial services. So I tell people at Hera Hub that I'm really just like many of us navigating Act 3. And so Act 3, as it looks like today, is I've got a portfolio that includes some public company boards. I have a small advisory practice, primarily in housing finance. And then I've recently started doing impact and angel investing. So that's my professional portfolio. Wine has been just a important and emerging part of my life all throughout my career, whether it was just learning to drink red wine when I was in my 30s, to coming to appreciate the body and the flavor, and then later on beginning to appreciate the business of wine. So I've sort of gone from a casual drinker to an appreciator to now the business. And so now we are I would characterize my husband and I as small batch winemakers in a hobby business that we hope we can at least break even and cover our costs.
That's awesome.
And we've been doing this for about 3 years, and we will have our first bottles in 2022. So we are vineyard owners, actually in Mendoza, Argentina. So we are owners of part of a project called the Vines of Mendoza. It's been around since about 2005, and it's 1,500 acres. I would almost call it a wine condo, if you will. So they sell the parcels in 1 to 10 acre plots. There are about 200 owners, maybe a little over 200. And we have a shared services of farming and all the other things to manage the property as one. But you have all of the rights of ownership, and you harvest your own grapes, you pick your farming plan, you decide how you want to blend it, you can trade grapes with other owners, and you can produce about 900 to 1,000 bottles per acre. So for our 2 acres, we'll have a couple thousand bottles a year to start on this journey. And they help you as much or as little as you want. So the first year, we're just doing, they help you decide what flavor are you looking for. Do you want to barrel ferment it? Do you want to tank it? Do you want to mix a little bit of Malbec and Cab Franc to test the flavor? So it's not only a wine ownership, vineyard ownership, but it's a group of people from all around the world who love wine and love food, and we're all learning the business together.
That is such an awesome idea. I love this. Talk a little bit about, obviously the pandemic has probably slowed you down from going there. Prior to the pandemic, how often were you headed to Argentina? And, kind of what's the plan moving forward?
So we've actually been to the site once just to kick the tires and see if we really wanted to do this. And then we went back actually right before the pandemic with our kids. We have 3 kids in their 20s, and we showed them, and we got to actually see our land, take photos, see the grapes and harvest. We had actually planned to go back in April of 2020, which is when they start the harvest. And our thought is we would go April each year until we got a groove on it and see the harvest. And then they have an owners conference in October of each year that bring together many of the owners from around the world. So some people tell us they try to go once a year, some go twice a year, some go with their families, and then some just completely outsource it. So again, it's you can get as engaged as much or as little as you want, but our goal is to not only cover the cost of the production, but also cover the cost of our travel at least once or twice a year to get there. That's success in our view.
Phyllis, what's your favorite type of wine?
Well, my favorite type of wine is Malbec, which I have to say because it's Argentina, but I also smile because in some ways, you know, wine and chocolate, two of my favorite things. And while I may love all sorts of Belgian and interesting chocolates, in a blind taste test, I'd probably take a Snickers bar because that's what I know best. And so I can say that I love all these interesting wines and the food and the this and the that, but probably if you lined it up with a taste test, I would probably like the cheapest Pinot Noir in the back because it would taste familiar from good old days. Yeah. So I tell people I don't like to do blind taste tests unless it's all my own stuff for that reason.
That is awesome. And a Snickers bar. That's great.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm a huge fan of Malbec too. I've only been to Argentina once and sadly didn't make it over to Mendoza. I was just in Buenos Aires. And then up in the north at Iguazu. So I definitely, it's on my list to go back to Argentina and go to Mendoza for sure. Just if somebody wanted to invest in something like this, what round numbers should they be thinking about?
No, I think it's fair to say that the vineyards actually, the plots actually vary where they are on the 1,500 acres because you get certain appellations that can go on your wine that make the wine more valuable. But I would say you could get an completely unplanted acre for maybe $75,000. And then you have to plant, you could pick your own. And many people like that because then their families come and they've done their first grapes. Or you could have a fully planted, already growing and producing for, you know, 125,000 per acre, maybe.
That's great.
At the high end. So that's the range. And it is a dollar denominated business, which part of this is land from a longtime Argentinian family. And so the offsprings knew the Uco Valley and its potential, but we're also looking for a dollar denominated business to take their family in the next generation.
Awesome.
So it's actually a Delaware company and you know, so you do actually own the land in Argentina. Okay. But your basis in the land is candidly very low. So when I said, you know, the $100,000 of price, yeah, probably 25,000 might be all you're paying taxes on in Argentina, and the rest goes to support the infrastructure. So we bought in 2019 and farmed immediately, harvested in 2020. Okay. And then planted new ones and harvested. We just got the report from this year's harvest with video. I mean, they film your people harvesting your grapes and putting it in.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Last question, Phyllis, is it something that's easy to get back here into the US? How does that all work?
Well, we are finding that out. But what we understand from friends who have done this, friends we've met there, is they have a wine storage facility in Texas, and they help you get set up on Vino Shipper if you want to ship it back and forth. You can also store it there and ship as needed. That's a little bit more expensive, but then you have less to manage. And then we met some folks here in Washington, DC just recently, and they have a big storage locker not far from our house, and they just import theirs all at once and they store it. But as they say, they like to go and see it and control it. So it's like everything in the vines, this is a club, and I think the team is figuring it out and they want to be responsive to us. So as I've said to people, part of it is you're buying into the land, but part of it is you're buying into this team and this group of people and this winemaking journey with 200 other people around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would imagine the people you're meeting, the other owners, are probably really interesting people to know as well.
Well, they are so interesting to us, but that's because, you know, we anybody who likes food and wine and travel, generally you can find a lot of overlap. And many of us have, our kids have gone off to college, and this is the next hobby. So we actually, you know, similar age, similar life station. So it is good. There are a few restaurant owners that take it very seriously. They own a large plot, and they're bottling to have vintner, owners vintage for their restaurants. But most of us, it's a friends and family hobby and journey.
So I initially joined Hera Hub because I have 5.5-year-old twins. I had my consulting practice. I was working from home, and I was like, this, I have got to get out of the house. And a friend told me about Hera Hub, which was close by. And I went in, and Julie and I really connected. And I started just going there every day and started working. And from there, I we've had so many great member events, lunches where I was able to meet more members. I actually found some clients through Hera Hub, met Phyllis at Hera Hub, and Phyllis, as Phyllis mentioned, we're now neighbors. And so it's just this wonderful community that Julia has really built and fostered over the years. So my background actually is in engineering. And so I started my career off in tech. And interestingly, how I got into wine is my first job out of grad school was with Hewlett Packard in Roseville, California, which is just an hour north of Napa Valley. And so, my early 20s, I took it for granted, but it was so great to be able to go to Napa whenever I wanted and try out. So that's where I started. I started trying wine. Sort of progressed from the whatever you drink at the age of 21 to like real wine. And for me, the more I learned about wine, the more I wanted to learn more about it. So it's like it's almost, wine is such an industry, I feel like, where the more you know about it, the more you realize you don't know. And so you want to learn more about it. And so, so I was in that area. And then interestingly, then I moved with HP up to Portland, Oregon. So it was very close proximity to the Willamette Valley. So really got into Pinot Noirs there. And then, moved east here. So my background has always been in sort of like marketing and tech. So that intersection, but several years ago, probably 10 years ago, I decided I wanted to pursue my certification in wine. So I pursued my so I'm a certified specialist of wine. So it's a CSW. So I took classes, and I wasn't really sure at the time. I was like, well, maybe I could, find an opportunity with marketing in wine, maybe do wine marketing, until I realized like there's no money in wine marketing. So to sustain myself from a real world standpoint, I decided I needed to stay focused in tech marketing. However, I do love wine. I did do a little bit of wine marketing for a winery out in Sonoma County called Census Wines, and they focus on, they're a small production winery. They do Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. But I learned a ton just like working with them on branding and their go-to market, and they were just rated recently by Wine Enthusiast, like a 99 on one of their bottles of wine. So they're doing pretty well. But yeah, no, it's been a passion of mine. My husband and I have gone around the world on wine vacations. So we pick an area that we want, or we pick a particular region that we really want to do a deep dive into. Before COVID, our last vacation was to Tuscany. So we learned, we went and visited all of the regional wineries there, or not all, but several regional wineries there. Learned a lot about Chiantis, and it's been a really great and exciting passion of mine. So.
And why did you choose that certification specifically, or that program?
Yeah, good question. So there are two tracks in wine. One is the sommelier track. So that's really if you really want to go into the food and beverage industry. So if you want to work at a restaurant, or you really want to do something where food is involved. And then the CSW track is more of like the education knowledge track. And so I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And so I figured the CSW was like the first step towards that. It's your next certification after the CSW is, I think it's called like a master. It's not master of wine, but it's sort of a master of something in education. So it's like one level up, but it's, again, if you're interested in the wine business, if you're interested in sort of, kind of management of wineries, like that's like the track you'd want to go.
So my story is similar. I actually joined Hera Hub in 2015, just after it opened. I was working out of my house and I saw the article, the opening day article in our local neighborhood press, and came, and I knew it was immediately for me. And as Archana said, you know, Julia is the master connector. What makes Hera Hub DC and probably the other markets different from your garden variety co-working is Julia's connecting and the community. So it's more than just an office space, it is a community. And as I said at the beginning, you know, navigating the next act has been a journey. And so Hera Hub does have its monthly lunches. There's kind of a joke that my story changes each lunch. And so when I came back, I mentioned to Julia that we went ahead and we did buy this vineyard. And at the next lunch, Julia announced us as winemakers. Archana then immediately made the connection. And there was an entire community of wine at Hera Hub. We then had a wine tasting at Hera Hub, just an evening membership event, and learned a lot. And then I actually invited Archana to my house to do the first blending from the vines of Mendoza, where they were getting your taste palette. And so we had neighbors, and Archana helped us think through what we were tasting. And then now I realized, like, I need her skills because I have the numbers, but I don't have the vision and the design and the other pieces. So it's a perfect match. We're good. I hope, you know, next time you're in the Washington area, when we can all be together again, we'll have some wine, because
we'll drink wine together. Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe at that point you'll have some wine from your vineyard.
We probably will. We should, like I said, it's bottling this fall and should be in the United States January.
That's amazing. Wonderful. Well, I can't wait to go to DC and have some wine with both of you.
Thanks for having us on, Felena.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
my pleasure.
Absolutely.